Oh, thanks very much. Um, so just before we dive in, I'm going to tell you about myself. My name is Nathaniel. I'm I wear many hats. So I'm a freelance Salesforce consultant, and I've been doing Salesforce for about 15 years, since 2009. I'm also a mentor for various programs, being Supermoms and London Admins. And I'm a technical coach for the Technical Collective, which aims to bring junior admins, people who are starting out or need some experience, together with charities that need some volunteering time, and I make sure they do it right. Yeah, as part of my role as a technical coach for the Technical Collective. We will be at the sprint, so come and say hi to us at the sprint. Um, Across all of those roles, I talk to people about flows, right? I talk to people about the most efficient way of building out about flows and processing multiple records. And this talk uh, basically came about because I was talking with a team to me, oh, the cruise flow, and so I can practice some stuff. And I looked at mine, and I thought, we don't want to start with what I'm doing. So I asked ChatGPT, and I said, "Oh, can you give me some scenarios?" And it came back. I looked at each of those scenarios, and I thought, I don't do it like that anymore. I do something else. And then I dove in deeper, and each of those scenarios and each of those sort of ways of doing things, whether you Google it or go to ChatGPT or Claude or whoever, they're still saying that you should use a loop, even though I don't, in my opinion, that's not the most efficient way of doing it anymore. And that is basically because the AI is and the Google results are looking at the bulk of the advice and the articles and the YouTube videos that are out there. And the newer techniques, there's not as much, there's not as many pages. So it still skews more towards loops, even though they're not the most efficient or straightforward path forward now. Okay, so what we're going to be doing is we're in today's session, we're going to look through some typical scenarios where you will now be told to use a loop. We're going to look at the approach given using the loop approach, and then we're going to look at the modern alternatives. Yeah, so a lot of this will be you looking at flow screens with me. Okay, so if we're ready, we're going to start. So this is my first scenario. So when an account is updated, we update all the related contacts and we copy the account phone to the contacts business phone. So, I've managed lots of Salesforce people, and as I say, I also mentor and coach people. So our requirement here is that the triggered flow on the account. We loop through the related contacts, we update each contact, and then we use a collection variable to bulk update at the end. Okay, so we're practicing getting records, looping through them, doing an assignment, and updating records outside the loop. So let's see that in action. So this is my update. Yeah, so as we said, we get the related records, which is a simple get, right? So I'm getting the contact where the account ID is equal to the account ID which triggered this record. And then that gives me a collection of records. I loop through them. I then have an assignment to update the account phone to be equal to the triggering records account phone. I add that to a collection, right? So I've got a variable which I've called contact because I have no imagination, which is my collection of contacts. And then at the end, I update the contacts using that collection that I built inside the loop. So this is a fairly standard, you see this all over the place kind of loop. You might not be doing this on accounts, you might be doing it on other objects, but this is pretty standard. And it is such a common problem that Salesforce give you a different way of doing it. So if I look at my version 2, all of that is replaced with this one element. So now I say I've got a single box that says update the related contacts. And in here, what I do, and I will show you this from scratch, in here, it says, well, I've got a triggering account. What do you want to update? So I can update anything that's related to the account, in this case, it's the contacts. And then it says, okay, well, these are the fields on the contacts. Update the business phone to the account phone. So this is, pretty simple, much, much easier. And it's actually quicker and easier for Salesforce to do it than the way that I was doing it in the loop. So let's head back, right? So now my scenario is the same, and my requirement is that I trigger it on the flow and I update the related contacts. And the concept I practice is I just use the update related representative. Yeah. So I'm going to motor through these a little bit more quickly now, but that's sort of what we're going to be doing. We're going to be looking at the basic loop and then continuing on. So that's one of the things that Salesforce gives us, which means we don't have to loop anymore. Oh, so if I look at my second scenario, okay. So now when a new opportunity is created, we count how many open opportunities the account has, we store it in a new field called an open opportunity, right? So this, we're going to loop through, we're going to use a number variable as a counter, and then update it at the end. Again, we're avoiding the DML inside the loop, and we're doing some arithmetic. So let's see what that looks like. And this is nice. So I just need to do this. So that's my count of the child records. So again, an opportunities creators. I'm going to get the open opportunities where the account ID is equal to the opportunities account ID, and so that's how I get the parent. Closed equals false. So these are the open opportunities. I loop through them. I've got an assignment here where the opportunity counter, and in this case, I'm adding one because it's a number. I just add one, and then I update the account where I've got my field opportunity count equals that variable that I've set inside the loop, which is my opportunity counter. Again, very common. This is the way that you might do a count of staff. This is very common for if you can't do a roll-up summary field. But in my second version, in my non-loop version, Salesforce have given me a really simple, instead of doing it inside a loop, I've got I've got an assignment here which is equals count. So when I've got a collection like this, I can go, well, you see that variable? It equals the count of all of the things that are inside that variable. Yeah. And I'm also just going to say the account ID equals the triggering account ID, and then I update the account using a record variable that I'm setting inside the loop inside the assignment. So again, quicker, easier to read, and Salesforce actually does this more efficiently, more quickly. And if you're looking through a lot of records, this saves some time for the Salesforce to do it. So that means that my single assignment is I get the opportunities, I assign an account, and then I update it. So these are getting a little bit more complex as we go through. So now we're going to move on, and this is another scenario where you'll be told to do a filter a record, and there's lots of reasons why you want to filter those records using inside the loop. So when a case is created, you find all the related contacts where they have received notifications and add them to a collection so that we can send them an email, right? So that is my scenario number three. So my start is the same. Yeah, I get the contacts, I loop through them. I then have a decision in here. Do they does this contact that I'm looking at, does it have a notification? Yes. So then I set the contact emails to notify, and then which is actually just this time I've got this list of IDs, and because it's a text, adding is a text variable which has allows for multiple records, multiple instances. Adding means that it adds the first one and then adds a comma and then adds another one and a comma and adds another one as a comma. So so that creates a collection, and I'm going to use that collection as in my recipient addresses for my send email action. So I'm going to dive straight into version two. So version two starts the same, but now I'm going to do this as a transform. So the first thing I'm going to say is if your requirement is to only get, is you're only dealing with things where that meet some criteria, start out. I know that ChatGPT will tell you not to do this, but start out with getting the records and only get the records that you actually want to transform. All right, that's your first thing. So receive notifications equals true. Then what I'm going to do on this transform is on the left hand side, this is my collection. On the right hand side, this is what I'm transforming it into. So I'm going to very quickly do that, right? So to do this, I'm going to say transform. I'm going to take my source data, which will be a collection that I created. So that's my get records collection. So that's my contacts. I'm going to say that my target data is going to be some text. Like target data is going to be text. Okay. And then you'll see that anything that is a text, anything that I can pop in. So I might pop in the email address. So if I want a list of email addresses, I click on the node there, I drop it in there, and then that is a collection. If I name this, so I will name this Bob, right? Because I'm very bad at naming things. Um, that in my manager gives me a collection which is called Bob, right? So in my send email, yeah, I can use that transform. Yeah. Does that make sense? Yeah. So I've got so this is a fairly simple transform where I'm taking stuff and popping it into a list for my collection. Yeah. So again, here we're filtering on the get records. We use transforming using a collection, and we're practicing doing transforms and building a tech collection. So number four. So there's eight of these altogether, which is why I'm rushing. I'm hurrying. So we've got some time for questions at the end. And as I said, they get more complex as we go through. So here, when an opportunity is created, create an opportunity contact role for each account contact role for the related account. So our requirement is that we get all the account contact roles for the parent account. We loop through them. We create new opportunity contacts, and then we use a record collection for bot creation. So we're looping, we're mapping fields, we've got collection variables. So this is going to be number four. And again, uh, we get the account roles, we loop through the account roles. Yeah. I then uh, create a single opportunity contact role. And then I take that, which is going to be the opportunity ID, which triggered, and the contact ID that I found in my account contact role. And then I add that single one to a collection. Yeah, so this is the add again, where I'm adding where the for the opportunity contact role, I'm adding that single record that I created in the previous assignment. And then I create that opportunity contact role at the end. Okay. Um, so I've spent years and years doing this kind of thing. I've done this a lot. Now what I would do is everything that's inside that gets replaced by a transform. Right. So it's a different type of transform, which I start the same way, right? Left hand side, I added my source data to the account contact roles. On the right hand side, my target data is the I tell it I want a record, and I tell it what type of record I want, which is the opportunity contact role. But uh, I want to map the contact ID to the contact ID. That's fine, but I also want the opportunity ID, and that's not in the account contact role. Where it is, it's in the start element. So I'm adding two source datas to the left. I can have one collection, and there's many singles on the left, right? So in this case, I've got the start element, which is the record, the S object record, and from there, I am going to take the ID, right? So these can be anything you like. They can be variables or calculations, whatever. And you just drop them on the left, and then you map that to where you want it to be over here. So if I always wanted it to be a certain role, I would do that. Yeah. So everything that happened inside that loop gets replaced by this transform, and then same as before. So the start and end are the same, but the loop is replaced by a transform, and I create the opportunity contact role from that transform element that I did before. Okay, so we're halfway, and I guess I just want to check in. How is everybody feeling? Are we feeling like, yay, I understand all this, or are we like, oh no, what have I done? Okay. I'm going to take this as a we're all happy. So here our requirement for the transform was we got all the account records as before. We use a collection and a single variable and use that transform, right? And then we've got some field mappings and collection variable as our concepts that we practice. Okay. So we've looked at one type of roll-up summary, that's the count. Now we're going to look at a different type of roll-up summary, which is a sum, right? So when opportunity is closed, calculate the total value of all closed won opportunities and store it on the account in the total won amount. So here we're going to loop through the opportunities, sum the field, store that total in a number variable, and just for larks, if the value is higher than 10,000, we've got a new field high value customer, which we're going to set to true. And we want to update that account once, right? So we're using accumulators and roll-up logic without using a roll-up summary field. And there's lots of reasons why roll-up summary fields are not always available. So I'm going to do that. And the truth is, you might also want to think about using the declarative lookup roll-up summary for this if you don't fancy writing your own. I tend to write my own because I can. Okay, right. That was version 2. That's spoilers. Right, let's look at version 1. So version 1. Um, so here, at the opportunities, look through them, set the amount. So you probably guessed it already. I've got the amount where I'm adding the to the amount sum, right? So every time I loop through, I then have a decision as to whether it's a high value customer, right? So that is there. So I've got this variable high value high value customer equals true if in my decision the amount sum is greater than 10,000, and then I update the account. Let's look at how we do this instead. So this is a slightly trickier transform. Um, so everything inside the loop is this transform, but this transform is different, right? So I'm going to do this transform. Okay. Uh, uh, so I'm going to call this one Sandra because I can't be bothered to think about a name. And I'm going to use the opportunity from Get Opportunities. Okay. And I'm going to set as my target data uh, a record. And I'm not going to allow multiple. I'm going to say I want the account field. Okay. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to collapse this. I'm going to drag this. I'm going to find, so the whole record, yeah, the whole of that collection, and I drag it to where I want it, which is going to be my uh, total one amount. So I drag that in. And now it's going to say, oh, you must be trying to aggregate this. Are you trying to count it? Or are you trying to sum it? So I'm going to tell it to sum. And then, okay, what on the opportunity are you trying to sum? So that's the amounts. And then I'm mapping it into this field. Okay. So that's groovy. So now this collection, yeah, and I can see that this is an aggregate because it's got this little aggregate on it. And then, as before, I can use that value when I'm updating the account. So I've got the account from transform opportunity amount, right, which is what I did there. Yeah. So as I say, a little bit tricky because you need to remember to drop over the entire record and then tell it what field from that record you wanna update, you want to aggregate. But then the transforms fairly simple. And obviously the decision um, is the same. Cool. Okay. So here we practice using an aggregation and transforms. We've made some decisions based on that aggregate data, and we're still using roll-up logic without using a roll-up summary field. Okay, so number six, so three more to go. So number six, this is where we're saying that we're syncing the account team members with the opportunity team members. So we're getting the account team members, we're getting the opportunity team members. We're going to loop through them, and any people in the account team that are not on the opportunity team, we're going to add them in, right? So this is where we are in the looking at the two collections. So far we've only looked at sort of one collection of records, and now we're going to be looking at two collections of records. And so we start the same. So an opportunity triggers when it meets all my conditions. In the loop version, I get my opportunity team members. I get the account team members. I loop through the opportunity team. I get my list of opportunity team member IDs by having a text collection which I'm adding to. I then loop through the account team, and my decision here is does the current is that list that I created earlier, does it contain the current user ID that I'm looking at in here? So if it doesn't, then I know that this person is not in the opportunity team, right? This account team member is not in the opportunity team. So I set a single, I add to the opportunity team, I create a new opportunity team member at the end. Yeah. So it's a little bit complicated, but basically I create a list of IDs and and then I loop through the account team and see whether that person that I'm looking at now in that loop is in that original list of opportunity team members. So can we make this easier and simpler? I think we know the answer is yes, but I want to show you how. Okay. So get the opportunity team member. So what we did before, where we got the list of user IDs, yes, I'm going to do that. Okay. Then when I get the account team members, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, well, I only want the account team members who are not in this list of user IDs. Yeah. So I'm filtering the account team member list already. And then I do my transform. Yeah. So I now say the user rather from that account team member gets added to the opportunity team member, and I've got the opportunity ID which I'm going to pop in here. and then I create the opportunity team member, right? All nice and simple, right? So this is much cleaner, and because I'm only getting what I need to get, I have less work for Salesforce to do. So okay, I forgot to rename that. So here I'm using a text collection in a transform. I'm filtering and getting where it's not in the text collection, and that allows me to prevent duplicates and just add in bulk. So my penultimate one is a dedupe, right? So when a contact is created, I check for duplicate contacts on the same account with the same email, and I flag it with an is duplicate. Um, Again, there are reasons why you might want to do it this way rather than dedupe roles. So this is a familiar thing by now. We get the contacts, we loop through them, right? So a contact's created, we get the contacts for the parent account. I loop through those and I compare. So does the current item in the loop, so is the contact I'm looking at right now, does it equal the triggering contacts email? And if it does, then I flag it as a duplicate and I add it to a collection. Right. So if I've got three, they'll all be flagged. And then I update the contact. We can do this more simply by saying, yeah, so my second version is basically this, right? So here we're back to updating related contacts, right? But here, related contacts is even better than I first advertised because I've got the triggering contact. I go up to the account ID and then back down to all the things which relate to those contacts. Let me show you that again. So I've got the triggering contacts. I've got the accounts, yeah, and then anything that's related to the account, right? So and then I can update those, yeah, and I could do that with anything that's related to the contact. I could say, all the meetings for the opportunities or something like that. And then I'm going to say, well, only update them if the email is equal to that triggering contact's email. And I'm going to say, is it equals true? Everything is done all in one hit for what was the second most complicated thing that in my list of records, list of objects. So then, lastly, so yes, here we're practicing an advanced use of the update related records. So then lastly, we have the multi-level parent update, where it's when a task is completed, we're going to look at the record health, right? So similar to something I've done for a client recently. So I loop through all the tasks related to the same opportunity. I count the completed versus open tasks, and I update the opportunity health score accordingly. So I'm going to tell you that me and ChatGPT disagreed on how to do this in the loop, right? So I'm not even going to tell you how ChatGPT told me to do it because I hated it. But the task is created. I get the tasks that relate to the same opportunity. I loop through them, and then I have a decision inside that loop. Yeah, which is it open? Is it closed? and then if it's open, then I set a counter for open, and if it's closed, I set a counter for closed, and then I update the opportunity. When I when I went through this with ChatGPT, it told me to do two get records rather than one, and then two loops, which is very, very inefficient. Um, but never mind. So what I'm going to do instead is do a single task. I filter the open tasks. Yeah. Uh, I filter the closed tasks, and then so I've got two collections, and then I use the count of closed tasks, the count of open tasks. So this is fairly new, but essentially what this does, I get records once, and instead of getting the records multiple times, what I'm doing is I'm then saying, okay, that get records, I want a new collection, which is just the right ones which meet some criteria. And then over on the side here, even though I'm only going to the database once, I can see here that I've got this tasks from filter, closed tasks, and tasks from filter, right? Which means that I can then treat those separately and update the opportunity. Yeah, with a health score, which is a calculation of how many are are closed and how many are open. Yeah. So with my client recently, they have like 10 tasks which have to be done before the opportunity can be fully closed. And that's why, you know, you would do something like this because you need to they needed to do due diligence. Um, so uh, that is how I do that without. So my conclusion here is that loops are great, um, uh, but always consider the more efficient alternatives first. Um, uh, so there are some really interesting things you can do. You can filter record collections instead of using decisions. You can use transforms inside to aggregate logic. You can update records related to the triggering record directly while iterating through lists using the new update related element. You can leverage your transforms for record collections, for text collections, etc. And you can use, and your maths can be streamlined because you've got calculations like using a count assignment for clean logic. Um, so that is everything I wanted to talk to you about today. Um, I think we have some time for questions.
Was it just
Amazing.
Kimberly's question about repeaters in the chat, I think?
Okay. You know what? I haven't used repeaters very, very much. I've got to admit. So yeah, I've deliberately left screen flow stuff out of this side. But yes, my understanding is that you end up with you'll have some collection stuff, and then however you get your collection, you will you can decide whether you want to loop it or use another one of these elements. Um, but I haven't thought about repeaters. Uh, any other questions?
I have a question that I'm trying to type, but it might just be easier to just explain.
Okay.
Um, I this was head melty, by the way, and I loved it. And maybe you went over it, but I didn't quite kind of see an obvious one. How do you update information on the same record that you've pushed through the loop? Like I get the input and the output. So ordinarily, it was like you push something through a loop and then you take that record, and then I want to update a checkbox, say to true, and then I want to take all the checkboxes that I want to update to true, add them to a collection, and spit them out the other end, and chuck some decisions in there as well. But I couldn't get my head around how you update the same record that you're pushing into the transform.
Okay. Um, yeah, I'm not entirely sure answer. You so what are you do? What are we doing with our transform here? Sorry, everyone.
No, that's
We're
fine.
uh, so just talk me through that again. So we have a record that triggers,
Yeah, so we have a record that
and then
triggers,
what do we do? And then we're getting something.
and
What
then
are we
we're getting
getting?
a collection of records, and I want to go through all of
Yes.
those records. And for every
Yes.
record that's in that collection, I want to check a box on that record to true.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah. So if you want to chuck them all to them all to true, what you would have is a constant,
Okay.
which is just true. Yeah.
And would
I
that
mean,
be
it could
your
be a
variable
variable,
on the
but it
output?
be a constant. Sorry.
Would that be your variable on the output source?
So your variable on the output would be a record, would be a record collection.
Okay.
Yeah. So on the left, you'd have your records that you get, and you'd have and you'd have a constant, which is just a checkbox that is true. Yeah. And then you map the ID of your records over on
Also
the
record
left to the
collection.
right. And then you map the constant of true over to your, whatever you're ticking, you know, your Boolean
Yeah.
um, field on the right hand side. Yeah.
Yes.
So then you could say yes, all of these. So I have done fairly recently something where someone's a bad payer, and uh, and you would say, okay, on the account, someone ticks bad payer. The opportunities, you loop through all of the opportunities, and you want to lose them all. Yeah. So I loop through all those. I transform all the opportunities. I have a constant which is close loss, and a reason as of close loss as they're a bad pair. Yeah. So those are two additional constants which I've added in. I map those over to the stage and the close loss reason, and then those are all updated, and then I do an update at the end. Yeah, it's the same sort of idea.
Awesome. Thank you.
Amazing. Unfortunately, we are now out of time, I'm afraid. I'm going to have to hand over to Bobby to let him start his presentation. Becky, I know you got a question. Maybe you want to pop it in chat and Nathaniel might be able to respond for you. Amazing. Okay. Thank you so much, Nathaniel. That was great. As I say, I think it was very head melty for everybody, but it was great. Might also ask if you
I
mind
will be
throwing.
sharing the slides.
That would be amazing. Fantastic.
Okay.
Brilliant.
Thank
Okay.
you all.
Bobby, the floor is yours. Give us a whistle stop tour of this amazing flow toolkit.
Can everyone hear me?
We can.
Is this working? You can see my screen. Everything's on.
Absolutely.
Okay, I got 25-ish minutes. Okay, thanks for having me. Great, Kimberly's here. Hi, Kimberly. Yeah, thanks for having me. My name is Bobby Wright. Sorry, you guys are up on my big screen up to my right. So if I look up, I'm looking at you. Find me on LinkedIn. If we're not connected, connect with me. I'm out of Kansas City, Missouri, the home base of England for the World Cup. And so if you want to stay with me during the World Cup, send me a message on LinkedIn, and I guess I'll let you sleep on my couch. I am an independent Salesforce consultant and ISV partner. I build stuff for nonprofits. I'm probably like a lot of folks here. I got started accidentally. I worked for a community gardening organization, and Salesforce was forced upon us, and it really stunk and it ruined my job. And so I spent my nights and weekends trying to figure out how to make it easier for me to still help people grow vegetables while I have Salesforce not getting away. And then I only do Salesforce now, and I got rid of vegetables in my life. Part of that journey, a lot of it was developing forms. I used form assembly a lot in the early days. I learned Visual Force, got into Lightning components, and the reason why I got into Visual Force and Lightning components eventually, because I got frustrated having to change things in multiple locations. If my team needed a new field or a new pick list value, I had to go inside of Salesforce. I had to add that field. I then had to go to my 20 different form assembly forms, make those updates, and that just slowed me down. And more than anything, that is like the biggest win that I built into the Flow toolkit, is that I want to do things inside of Salesforce. And when I make a change inside of Salesforce, all of my forms, all of my flows that reference my components that I build, they just automatically get updated. I don't have to worry about where is this at? What do I need to go make and sync? What do I need to refresh? So you can find the Flow toolkit on the App Exchange. I would also point you just to our website, commonunite.com, and you can find a bunch of demos. And I'll point out that probably like 90% of like my website here is built with components within the Flow toolkit. So I mostly use this as a demo site. So anything that you see here, you can build with the Flow toolkit. I'm not going to probably spend too much time on this because we got to rush through it, but you can build custom tables, custom form components that have, all like your dynamic show sections, different ways to display fields. We have like repeaters with some fun like additions where you can like import records and that data can come in. You can clone stuff, delete stuff, different ways to show it. Like I said, we have tables. We have a payment extension that you can bring Stripe payment collection right into your Flow screens. We have a calendar component that you could put stuff in to allow like your users to select dates like you would like, and say like a Calendly like error. Here's another example of a repeater that has information about accounts displayed. So yeah, lots of stuff. Go just explore the website. If you see it, you can do it inside the Flow toolkit. So one of the primary designs of the Flow toolkit is that you build what your users see on their Flow screen with inside of our form builder and our table builder. And what's really nice about that is that that lives outside of Flow. You can access this inside of Flow, but what this does for me as a consultant, or even as someone that's working on a team with different skill sets, is this allows me to decouple my front end, what my users see on the screen, from my data processing, which is inside of my Flow, right? My Flow handles like querying records, inserting, updating data, doing complex calculations, and maybe handling like the path. But everything that we might see on a screen, things that often change, like, hey, can somebody go and update the help text on this volunteer skills? You might not want to hand that off to like your advanced admin or like your developer or an expensive consultant to do little things like this. This gives us the ability to involve more people. Since this is an app that we can grant permissions to maybe super users, they can now own what they see on the screen. So if you're used to using other form tools that have like that pre-fill connector, post-processing connector, but then like everything that you see on the screen is like a drag and drop editor. That's what you get here. And then it provides you with all sorts of customizations to display things in different ways. So I'll probably zap over here to an example here. So if we were going to start a form component, this is what this looks like. You can add in multiple sections. I'm going to delete that for now, but I'm going to hide the header. And these components are wired into your object schema. And so unlike Flow, where you have to go in, if you're going to be building like a form, and you have to drag on like a text input field and a currency, or maybe an email input field, then you have to give it a label and tell it all the way to validate itself. That stuff takes time. It's too much time for me personally. And like anymore today, if I have to get in and build a flow screen with standard like input fields, I get frustrated. But what you can do with the Flow Toolkit is all of the fields on your object are just kind of automatically here. And so I can just start searching for fields. I'm just going to search for my first name field, maybe my last name. I'm just going to bring that over. So the fields are going to come down into your component. You can see what your component looks like as you're building it, but all like the defaults, like your help text that you have, if you're using pick list values, search for all my pick list fields here and maybe bring over origin. That's all going to be built into those fields. I then can, however, change everything that I want about this. So if I'm fine with these pick list values with that label, great. But I can then go in here and override that. I could say I could make this, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to change the look of that pick list from a standard to radio options. And I say, you know what, I really want that in one column or maybe two columns. I'm just going to change my mind about that again. I'm going to make that displayed as radio buttons. That looks better to me. And for this particular form, I don't really need the phone field. So even though that pick list, right, is at the object level, for this particular component, I don't really want that. I can now save this component, and I can now take this component and drop it in as many flows as I want. I can even drop this component right onto an Experience Cloud site, and it can insert records. It can update records. I can use this to replace like your dynamic forms. Is that what we call it? You know, when you go to a Lightning record page and you're, instead of using a page layout, you're dragging the fields on. Once again, things that take a lot of time. I can build my components and use these in flows on those Lightning record pages in my Experience Cloud site. And that just reduced 3 different things that I have to own inside of Salesforce just to one little component there. So let me show you some other wonderful little things you can do in here. And then we'll move on to showing you my form template solution. So file uploads is an interesting concept here. If you put in a long text field on any of your objects, we have a lot of these field overrides that you can use. So one of the overrides that you can use for the long text fields, you can transform that into a file upload that stores all the data for the file that you're uploading right onto that record that you can use to process that. And so I can control in here whether I allow multiple files. If I prevent deletion, I can set like the maximum number of files. I can put in a format. I can select in here what types of documents do I want people to select. And then when I actually go here, say I'm going to grab a couple of these, upload those. It's like standard Salesforce. That gets loaded into my record here. And because we're inside of the form builder, everything about this, like we can use our conditional rules to display this optionally. We can hide it. We can customize the label. A lot of good stuff with that. Let me show you.
Let's
Rich,
edit the former.
say what? I don't know if I heard that. If I drop down in here I don't know where that hello world came from. Long rich text fields, right? That can display by itself, just as put in your rich text. Some of the things you can do to transform the rich text fields, you can turn into a signature pad where you can collect digital signatures and that actually stores that image right into that rich text field. So that's very easy to access whenever you are, say, building out PDFs that you want to display, say, a waiver. But yeah, a lot of things. I would say you should go into install the Flow toolkit. It is free to install in sandboxes to play around with. And in fact, we have this, it's a freemium app. If you want to use this to build web to case or web to lead forms, you can use it 100% free. It's very easy to build out your forms. Here's an example of a volunteer like application that's built onto the lead object. So again, you can install it, drop it right onto an Experience Cloud site. Let me show you what that looks like here. If I'm in my Experience Cloud, we have a bunch of Experience Cloud components as well. But all it is coming onto a site. And then we have this form dynamic component. You select your object, select the component there, and it will inject that component right there and just insert leads, insert cases. Very, very easy to design these to customize the brand and the style in those components. So what this actually looks like in Flow, before I switch over to our form template solution, is this is what we're trying to replace. Instead of coming in here and saying, oh, I'll just drop the number field on. Instead of doing all of this, and now me as a developer, or me as a consultant having to own this flow or as an admin, and every time someone wants to change to the way that this field is labeled, which happens all the time, I don't do that. I get rid of this. Inside of Flow, you would have all of these form components. And our base component that you use for most of this is just called form component. I drop it right onto the screen. Let's say if I want to do like a basic lead, I give it an API name. I select my object, which then lists all of the components that I have built on this object here. And so you can see I have discount code form, a contact with demographics, a contact with address, just like my global contact form. If I select this, it'll show me a preview of like what that design is. Say, actually, that's not the one I want. I actually want to go down here and grab my volunteer application. Great, I'm going to inject that there. I don't really have to do anything else if I'm not like pre-filling any information. And then when it comes to actually inserting this record, I can say, this is like the pattern that I follow a lot now, as I call upsert. I go into that screen, go into that component, and then here are your outputs, right? There's no need to do like 50 different assignments mapping the one screen field to this record variable field. It's all just built into this record output. And there's a couple of different options in here for your different use cases. For the most part, I always use record if I'm inserting a record. But if you were doing updates and you wanted to ensure that you're not overriding or clearing out field values with empty or null, because somebody messed up and didn't make a field required that should have been required on an external form, and then you lose that data. Using these things are really helpful for not clearing out values with null values. And so, but in this case, I'm just going to add my record form and then click save. And now that is all I have to do for my screen flow. Now, what's really nice about this is, as long as my business process doesn't change, as far as like how I retrieve like pre-filling data, how I'm inserting records, I never have to get inside of this flow again. Like everything from this point on is maybe handing off to my internal team, like say, here, this is your particular component. You can even go in here and assign like specific users that can manage this component. So when they log in here, they might only see a handful. And now they could come in here and say, you know what, I don't know, COVID just happened. And now we have all these new fields. So I'm just going to add a new section of input fields here. I don't know what I'm going to actually add. Let me hide that section. On my lead object. I don't know. Maybe we're going back in time and we have to send faxes now. I'm going to add the fax field. I'm going to click save. And right, if I had this form in multiple flows, if I had this on my Experience Cloud site, those all get those references and away I go. And so that turned maybe something that, right, simple request, add this fax field. But like, right, I would have had to do a bunch of reviews, making sure that I wired the fields in correctly. So that's the general idea, the goal of saving time. Now, in the last year or so, we've been somewhat going like the next level of solving some other flow issues, especially when we work with long forms, say like long application forms. And that's what our form template tool is. Our form template framework is still mostly based on flow, but it gives users, non-admins or non-super technical admins, the ability to manage multi-page, slightly longer, complex forms with records. And so what we're seeing here is this is an object in Salesforce. It's called our form template object. And this allows us to control like the name of a form, whether it's active, available for submissions, the start dates, the end dates. We can come in here and pre-fill values that we want to set on forms. We can have like the confirmation message all get controlled here. I would highlight that this is a good strategy to use even if you're not using the flow toolkit, is when you're building out flows, as much as you can have related records control what users see on the screen, that makes them much more dynamic and easy to scale. You don't want to have to change your flows when things like this change. Like once again, like having to change the text inside of a confirmation message. It's best to give that to a standard user who's managing that to make those changes. So what this ultimately looks like, if I throw this up in my Experience Cloud site here, this multi-page form, we can see we have household information, coverage, housing preferences, documents, review and confirm. Let me just fly through here just to kind of give you a couple pages. See, it's very fast to respond here. We have our nice little indicator over here so that if we wanted to hop back to, well, I guess not, we have to go through since this is a guest user. These are multiple select pick list, which one of the fun features with that is you can say, oh, there's a limit of how many options you can select. Here's our example of our document attachments. And probably the last thing I want to show is our review components that allows you to take these components that you've already built. This is like a common thing that orgs want to see. Is like a final like review page inside of your flow where it's like, oh, you gave us all of your primary contact information. Here's everything before you do the final submission. This is just taking those components and just displaying them in a different form, so where people could go in there and edit that, make some final changes before they actually do the submission. So what's really nice about this framework is like this is all using a staging object. So all of these questions, sections, and all the information, this is all stored on an object called form submission. And what the primary reason what we're doing that for is that if you've ever built a complex flow, going back to if you were in our little flow breakout room, if something goes wrong in flow and you have a multi-page form like this, you can handle a fault, but you can't handle your whoever's submitting that flow just lost all that data. And that part really stinks. If you're going to try to build a complex application form, losing that data is no good. If you use a staging object for your flows for submitting data, the design typically is you don't put any type of validation. You don't have any like record triggered flows that immediately fire once those are submitted. So what that allows us to do is just ensure that we can always save data to the database there. So here's our application is submitted. So what happens is these form submission records get attached to this form template. I can go inside of here. Once again, what's nice about the Flow Toolkit is I don't have to use a page layout. I can just drop that component right onto the screen because the form template told me how many pages, what sections. And so my internal users can view the data in Salesforce just as my users or my external constituents or people did inside of my Experience Cloud site. This has built into it, it's a, if anybody's ever used platform events, it has a platform event-driven architecture in the background that allows us to control what actually happens with that data. And so I can have different form templates. I can say, you know what, I want to create some contacts. I want to add them to a campaign. I want to create a case. And in this situation, I want to create a funding request in the grants management module. And so after these records are submitted, it goes through this platform event process and it creates those records one at a time in the order in which it's needed. I am at time, I think. So if there's any questions or if you want to see more, I have open office hours pretty much every day. And I'm usually very available. If you want to reach out to me, you can schedule time on my calendar. But yeah, that is, if there's any questions or anything else that you want to see for sure. Yep, there's a question there. You can save your progress. That's for sure. Because of that staging object, we can set up things like save progress, right? And send somebody an email, say, hey, come back to this form. You're just giving them a link to that form submission ID, and that allows them to finalize that, which once again, you can do that inside of Flow with the pause feature, but it's not a very simple solution to implement, and it gets complicated when you're utilizing guest users for sure, if that's the situation that you're working in.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Bobby. That was super helpful. I hope everybody enjoyed the demo. Okay. Let's